The morning sun barely touched the mountains when Staff Sergeant Maria Santos checked her medical kit for the third time. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, counting bandages, morphine syringes, and tourniquets. At 26, she had already served 2 tours in Afghanistan, but something felt different about today's mission. Captain James Mitchell called the team together near the armored vehicles. His voice carried the weight of command as he outlined their objective: a humanitarian mission to deliver medical supplies to a remote village that had been cut off for weeks. Intelligence reports suggested the route was clear, but in this region nothing was ever certain. Maria had known Captain Mitchell for 8 months. He was the kind of leader who ate last and slept least, always checking on his soldiers before himself. The men respected him not just for his rank but for the way he led from the front. Maria had patched up more than her share of wounded soldiers, and she could read people quickly. Mitchell was solid. The convoy of 3 vehicles rolled out at 800 hours. Maria rode in the second vehicle with 4 other soldiers, her aid bag secured beside her. Through the thick glass, she watched the landscape change from dusty outposts to rocky terrain. The radio crackled occasionally with position reports, but otherwise the journey was quiet. 2 hours into the mission, the lead vehicle reported movement in the hills ahead. Maria felt her stomach tighten. She had learned to trust that feeling. Her fingers instinctively moved to check her sidearm, though as a medic, her primary weapon was her medical training. Still, every soldier in this theater learned to fight when necessary. The village appeared in the distance, a cluster of mud brick buildings nestled in a valley. Children ran alongside the convoy as they entered, waving and calling out. Maria smiled despite her nerves. This was why she had joined the medical corps, to help people who needed it most. The village elder, a weathered man with kind eyes, greeted Captain Mitchell warmly. Through an interpreter, he explained how grateful they were for the medical supplies. Their local doctor had left months ago, and several villagers were suffering from treatable conditions that had become dangerous without proper medicine. Maria set up a makeshift clinic in the village center. Word spread quickly, and soon a line of patients formed. She treated infected wounds, provided antibiotics for respiratory infections, and examined children who hadn't seen a medical professional in months. Each patient reminded her why she had chosen this difficult path. Captain Mitchell coordinated the supply distribution while keeping watch on the surrounding hills. The intelligence had been wrong before, and he wasn't taking any chances. He posted sentries at key positions and maintained radio contact with base. Everything seemed peaceful, but his experience told him to stay alert. As Maria worked, she noticed how the villagers looked at the American soldiers. There was gratitude, but also wariness. These people had lived through decades of conflict. They had learned to be careful about trusting anyone with weapons, even those who came to help. One patient, an elderly woman with severe arthritis, grabbed Maria's hand and spoke rapidly in Pashto. The interpreter translated. "She says you have healing hands like her grandmother, who was also a healer. She wants to bless you for your kindness." The old woman touched Maria's forehead gently and spoke what sounded like a prayer. Maria felt moved by the gesture. In that moment, the language barriers and cultural differences seemed to disappear, one healer recognizing another. By afternoon, Maria had treated over 30 patients. Her supplies were running low, but she had managed to help everyone who needed immediate attention. She left detailed instructions with a village teacher who had some medical training, showing him how to properly dress wounds and administer the medications they were leaving behind. Captain Mitchell gathered his team for departure. The mission had gone perfectly, too perfectly, Maria thought. Her unease was growing, though she couldn't explain why. Maybe it was just fatigue from the long day of treating patients. But something felt wrong. As the convoy prepared to leave, several villagers approached with small gifts: hand-woven bracelets, carved wooden figures, dried fruits. Maria was touched by their generosity. These people had so little, yet they wanted to give something back to the soldiers who had helped them. The lead vehicle reported all clear as they began the journey back to base. The same route they had taken that morning now looked different in the afternoon light. Shadows fell differently across the rocky terrain, creating new hiding spots that hadn't been there before. Maria settled back in her seat, her medical kit repacked and secured. She felt good about what they had accomplished. The village would have enough medical supplies to last several months, and she had provided treatment that might have saved lives. This was the best part of military service, making a real difference. The radio chattered with routine position reports as they climbed into the mountains. The landscape was beautiful in its harsh way, all red rock and endless sky. Maria found herself thinking about home, about the hospital where she had worked before enlisting. The pace there had been different, busy but predictable. Here every day brought new challenges. Captain Mitchell's voice came over the comm, checking with each vehicle. His tone was relaxed but professional. Maria had noticed how he managed to stay calm under pressure, how his steady demeanor helped keep everyone else focused. Leadership wasn't just about giving orders, it was about setting an example. The afternoon sun was beginning to lower when the first vehicle rounded a bend in the narrow mountain road. The driver reported clear ahead, but Maria's unease was growing stronger. She checked her watch. They were making good time, maybe too good. In her experience, missions that went exactly as planned often had surprises waiting at the end. She looked out at the rocky slopes rising on both sides of the road. Perfect terrain for an ambush, she thought, then pushed the idea away. The intelligence had been clear, this route was secure, but intelligence had been wrong before, and Maria had learned to trust her instincts as much as official reports. The convoy continued its steady pace through the mountains, unaware that hidden eyes were watching their progress, counting vehicles and estimating the number of soldiers inside. The peaceful mission was about to become something else entirely, and Staff Sergeant Maria Santos was about to face the greatest test of her military career. The explosion shattered the mountain silence like thunder. Maria felt the shock wave before she heard the sound, her vehicle lurching violently as debris rained down from above. Through the armored glass, she saw the lead vehicle ahead disappear in a cloud of dust and smoke. Her training kicked in immediately. This was an ambush. IED. Eat, the driver shouted into his headset. The vehicle skidded to a stop as automatic weapons fire erupted from the hillsides. Bullets pinged off the armor plating with sharp metallic sounds that Maria had heard too many times before. She grabbed her medical kit and checked her weapon, her mind already shifting into combat mode. Captain Mitchell's voice cut through the chaos on the radio. He was in the third vehicle, 50 meters behind Maria's position. All call signs, we have contact. Dismount and take cover. His voice was steady despite the circumstances, and Maria felt a surge of confidence hearing his calm commands in the middle of the firefight. The soldier beside Maria kicked open the armored door and dove out, immediately returning fire toward the muzzle flashes in the rocks above. Maria followed, staying low as she moved toward the lead vehicle. Through the smoke, she could see it had taken the full force of the roadside bomb. Her medical training told her there would be casualties. The firefight intensified as more weapons opened up from concealed positions. The enemy had chosen their spot well. The narrow mountain road gave the convoy nowhere to maneuver, and the rocky slopes provided perfect cover for the attackers. Maria low-crawled toward the damaged vehicle, ignoring the bullets that cracked overhead. Medic! We need a medic up here. The call came from Sergeant Davis, the lead vehicle's commander. His voice was strained but strong. Maria quickened her pace, using every piece of cover she could find. A bullet struck the ground inches from her elbow, spraying her with dirt and rock chips. When she reached the lead vehicle, the scene was worse than she had expected. The driver was unconscious but breathing, blood trickling from his ears, probably a concussion from the blast. The gunner had taken shrapnel in his leg and was applying pressure to the wound with his bare hands. But it was the fourth soldier that worried her most. Private Johnson was pinned under twisted metal, his leg clearly broken. He was conscious but pale, and Maria could see he was going into shock. She began working immediately, establishing an IV line while bullets continued to fly overhead. Her hands moved with practiced precision despite the chaos around her. "How bad is it, Doc?" Johnson asked through gritted teeth. Maria had learned that soldiers needed honest answers, not false comfort. "You're going to be fine, but I need to get you out of here," she told him while injecting morphine for the pain. The truth was more complicated. His injuries were serious, but she had seen worse. The problem was getting him evacuated while under fire. The battle raged around them for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Maria could hear Captain Mitchell coordinating the defense, his voice coming through clearly on the radio as he directed his soldiers' fire and called for air support. The enemy fire was accurate and persistent, suggesting they were well-trained fighters who had planned this ambush carefully. Maria finished treating Johnson's wounds and moved to the other casualties. The driver was regaining consciousness, which was a good sign, though he would need observation for possible brain injury. The gunner's leg wound was painful but not life-threatening once she properly dressed it. "Santos, what's your status?" Captain Mitchell's voice came through her headset. Even in the middle of a firefight, he was checking on his people. "3 casualties, all stable for now," she reported back. "Johnson needs immediate evacuation, but the others can wait. Copy, air support is inbound, ETA 15 minutes. Can you get them ready to move?" Maria looked around at the tactical situation. 15 minutes felt like a lifetime with enemy fire keeping them pinned down. The damaged vehicle provided some cover, but they were sitting ducks if the enemy decided to advance down the hillside. A new sound joined the battle, the distinctive crack of a sniper rifle. Maria heard Sergeant Davis curse as a bullet struck the rock near his head. Someone up there had better equipment and training than the others. The sniper fire was incredibly accurate, forcing the American soldiers to keep their heads down. "We've got a sniper in the rocks at 2 o'clock. Davis called over the radio. "Can't move without exposing ourselves to that rifle." Maria finished preparing her patients for evacuation and took stock of their position. They were trapped in a deadly crossfire with limited cover and casualties who couldn't move quickly. The situation was bad and getting worse. That's when she heard Captain Mitchell's voice again, but this time it wasn't coming through the radio. He was moving up toward their position. Despite the intense fire, Maria could see him 30 meters back, using every bit of cover as he advanced to assess the situation personally. "Sir, stay back," Davis shouted. "We've got this handled." But Mitchell kept moving forward. Maria had seen this before. Leaders who couldn't stand to direct a fight from safety when their people were in danger. It was admirable and terrifying at the same time. Good leaders led from the front, but they also needed to survive to keep leading. The sniper seemed to notice Mitchell's movement. Maria saw the muzzle flash from high up in the rocks, followed immediately by the sharp crack of the rifle. Captain Mitchell dove behind a boulder just as the bullet struck where he had been standing a split second before. "That was close." Mitchell's voice came through the radio, slightly breathless but still calm. "I'm moving to your position to coordinate the evacuation." Maria felt her heart racing as she watched her commander expose himself to enemy fire to reach his wounded soldiers. This was why the men followed him. He never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. But it also meant he was putting himself in the same danger they faced. Another burst of automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple positions. The enemy was well coordinated, with fighters in at least 3 different locations providing overlapping fields of fire. Maria realized this wasn't a random attack. It was a carefully planned ambush designed to trap and destroy the entire convoy. She checked her watch. Air support was still 10 minutes away. 10 minutes might as well be 10 hours if Captain Mitchell got himself killed trying to reach them. Maria made a decision that would change everything. She was going to have to do more than just treat the wounded. She was going to have to help fight her way out of this ambush. The mountain battlefield had become a deadly chess game, and Maria Santos was about to become a key player in a fight for survival that would test every skill she had learned as both a medic and a soldier. Captain Mitchell sprinted the last 20 meters to Maria's position, diving behind the wrecked vehicle as bullets whined overhead. His face was flushed from the run, but his eyes were sharp and focused as he assessed the casualties and the tactical situation. "Good work, Santos," he said, checking on each wounded soldier. "How mobile are they?" "Johnson needs a stretcher, but the other 2 can walk with help," Maria reported. "The real problem is that sniper. He's got our whole position covered." Mitchell nodded, pulling out his binoculars to study the hillside. The sniper was positioned in a perfect spot, high up with clear fields of fire and multiple escape routes. Taking him out would require either exceptional marksmanship or someone getting close enough to spot for the other soldiers. "Air support is 8 minutes out," Mitchell said, checking his watch. "But we need to neutralize that sniper before the helicopters arrive. Or they'll be sitting ducks too." Maria watched as her commander studied the terrain with the practiced eye of someone who had fought in these mountains before. She could see him working through options, calculating risks and probabilities. The weight of command was written on his face. Every decision could mean life or death for his soldiers. "Sir, I've got an idea," Sergeant Davis called over. "If we can create a diversion on the left flank, I might be able to work around to the sniper's position." Mitchell considered this. "Too risky." "That's exactly what they're expecting us to do. They've probably got people waiting for that move. Another burst of gunfire erupted from multiple positions, and Maria realized the enemy was probing their defenses, looking for weaknesses. The attacks were coordinated and disciplined. These weren't random fighters, they were experienced soldiers who knew how to conduct an ambush. "Santos, can you handle the casualties if we have to move fast?" Mitchell asked. "Johnson's the problem," Maria replied. "I can get him mobile, but not quickly, and moving him could make his injuries worse." Mitchell weighed the options. Wait for air support and risk the enemy getting reinforcements, or try to fight their way out with wounded soldiers who couldn't move quickly. Neither choice was good. That's when the sniper made his mistake. A glint of sunlight reflected off his scope as he shifted position, giving away his exact location. Mitchell spotted it immediately and grabbed the radio. "All stations, sniper position marked. Large boulder formation, 200 meters up the slope at your 2 o'clock. The American soldiers concentrated their fire on the position, forcing the sniper to take cover. But Maria could see the problem. They were shooting uphill at a well-protected position with limited ammunition. They might keep the sniper's head down, but they probably couldn't eliminate the threat. "We need someone with a clear angle," Mitchell said, more to himself than anyone else. He was studying the hillside again, looking for a way to get above the sniper position. Maria followed his gaze and saw what he was thinking. There was a narrow trail that led up the slope about 50 meters to their right. It was exposed for part of the climb, but it might provide access to higher ground where they could get a better shot at the sniper. "I'll go," Mitchell said, checking his rifle. "Davis, you take command here. Get ready to move the casualties as soon as I take out that sniper." "Sir, with respect, that's a bad idea," Davis replied. "You're needed here to coordinate. Let me make the climb." But Mitchell was already moving, and Maria could see the determination in his eyes. This was who he was, a leader who took the dangerous jobs himself rather than ordering others to do them. It was admirable and infuriating at the same time. The climb started well. Mitchell moved quickly but carefully, using available cover to mask his movement. The other soldiers increased their rate of fire to keep the enemy distracted. For a few minutes it looked like the plan might work. Then everything went wrong. The sniper had spotted Mitchell's movement and was tracking him through the scope. Maria saw the muzzle flash and heard the distinctive crack of the rifle. Captain Mitchell stumbled, then fell behind a small outcropping of rocks about halfway up the slope. "Mitchell's down," Davis shouted. "Medic!" Maria's training kicked in instantly. She grabbed her aid bag and started moving toward her fallen commander, but Davis caught her arm. "Santos, no. That's exactly what they want. The snipers got that whole area covered." Maria looked up at the rocks where Mitchell had fallen. She couldn't see him, which meant he was either taking cover or seriously wounded. Either way, her job was to reach him and provide medical treatment. "He's my patient now," she said, shaking off Davis's grip. "Cover me!" Before anyone could stop her, Maria was moving. She stayed low, using every bit of cover as she worked her way toward the slope. Bullets cracked overhead, but the other soldiers were laying down suppressive fire that kept the enemy's heads down. The climb was harder than it looked. The rocks were loose and the angle was steep. Maria's medical kit felt heavier with every step, but she kept moving upward. She could hear Mitchell calling out position reports, which meant he was conscious and still trying to command the battle despite being wounded. When she reached his position, Maria found Captain Mitchell propped against a boulder with blood soaking through his uniform shirt. He had taken a bullet through the shoulder, serious but not immediately life-threatening if she could stop the bleeding. "Santos, what are you doing here?" he demanded as she began working on his wound. "I told Davis to keep you back." "Davis doesn't outrank me when it comes to medical decisions," Maria replied, cutting away his shirt to access the wound. "Besides, you need treatment before you bleed out." The bullet had gone clean through his shoulder, missing the major arteries but causing significant tissue damage. Maria worked quickly to control the bleeding and stabilize the wound. Mitchell tried to protest, but she ignored him, focused entirely on her medical training. "There," she said, securing the field dressing. "You'll live, but you're not climbing any more mountains today." Mitchell looked down at the bandage, then at Maria. "You shouldn't have come up here. Now we're both trapped." Maria looked around their position. He was right. They were pinned down by the sniper with limited cover and no easy way back to the convoy. The wounded captain couldn't move quickly, and Maria wouldn't leave him behind. "Well then," she said, checking her sidearm, "I guess we need to finish what you started." Captain Mitchell stared at her in amazement. His medic had just climbed into a sniper's kill zone to treat his wounds, and now she was talking about completing the mission to eliminate the enemy position. He was about to learn just how determined Staff Sergeant Maria Santos could be when her patients and fellow soldiers were in danger. Maria studied the terrain above their position, while Mitchell tested his wounded shoulder. The sniper was perhaps 50 meters higher up the slope, positioned behind a cluster of large boulders that provided excellent protection. Getting to him would require crossing open ground under his direct observation. "Santos, this is crazy," Mitchell said, wincing as he tried to move his arm. "We wait for air support." "That's an order. Sir, with respect. Air support is still 5 minutes away, and that sniper will pick off the helicopters before they can help anyone." Maria checked her rifle and counted her ammunition. "Besides, you're wounded and can't give me orders about my medical decisions anymore." Mitchell almost smiled despite the circumstances. His medic had just found a loophole in military protocol. Technically, she was right that medical personnel had authority over treatment decisions, though he doubted that extended to combat operations. Down below, the firefight continued. Maria could hear Sergeant Davis coordinating the defense and trying to keep the enemy pinned down. The wounded soldiers were stable for now, but Johnson needed real medical attention soon. Time was running out for everyone. "Look," Maria said, pointing up the slope. "The sniper has to expose himself to shoot. If I can get close enough, I might be able to spot him for you or take the shot myself." "You're a medic, not a sniper," Mitchell reminded her. "I'm a soldier first, and I qualified expert marksman in basic training," Maria replied. "Plus, I've been watching his pattern. He's good, but he's getting comfortable. Comfortable shooters make mistakes." Mitchell realized she was right. The sniper had been in position for almost 20 minutes, and his shots were becoming more predictable. He was concentrating on the main convoy position and hadn't adjusted his focus to account for the possibility that someone might be working around his flank. "Even if you get close enough for a shot, you'll be completely exposed," Mitchell pointed out. "One miss and he'll cut you down before you can find cover." Maria nodded. She understood the risks better than anyone, but she also understood that doing nothing meant watching her fellow soldiers remain pinned down, while enemy reinforcements potentially arrived. Sometimes the dangerous choice was the only real choice. "Captain, I need you to do something for me," she said, opening her medical kit. "In about 2 minutes, I need you to radio down to Davis and have everyone concentrate fire on that sniper position. Make as much noise as possible, get his attention focused downhill." "Santos, don't do this," Mitchell said, but he could see she had already made up her mind. "At least take my rifle. It's got better range than your M4. Maria looked at his weapon, an M4 carbine similar to hers, but equipped with an advanced optic sight that would give her better accuracy at distance. She made the swap, adjusting the scope quickly to account for the uphill angle. 2 minutes, she repeated, then began moving up the slope. The climb was terrifying. Every step took her further from cover and closer to the sniper's position. Maria used every technique she had learned in training, moving during the enemy's reload times using tiny bits of cover, staying low and quiet. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure the sound would give her away. The rocks were loose and treacherous. Twice she nearly lost her footing, catching herself just in time to prevent a slide that would have announced her presence to everyone on the mountain. Her medical training helped. She was used to working under pressure with steady hands, and those skills transferred to combat marksmanship. Below her, she could hear Captain Mitchell's voice on the radio, coordinating with Sergeant Davis. Right on schedule, the volume of fire from the convoy position increased dramatically. Every soldier was shooting at the sniper's rocks, creating exactly the distraction Maria needed. The sniper took the bait. Maria could hear his rifle firing rapidly as he engaged multiple targets below. He was focused entirely on the threat from downhill, never imagining that someone might be approaching from his side. Maria reached a position about 30 meters from the enemy fighter. From here, she could see him clearly through the scope, a bearded man in desert camouflage completely absorbed in his battle with the soldiers below. He was skilled and well-equipped, but he had made the fatal mistake of losing awareness of his surroundings. She settled into a stable shooting position, controlling her breathing the way her instructors had taught her. The scope's crosshairs centered on the target, and Maria began the careful process of taking a precision shot. Distance, wind, elevation angle, all factors that could mean the difference between success and disaster. The sniper shifted position, giving Maria an even better angle. He was completely exposed now, confident in his superior position and unaware that death was approaching from his blind side. Maria's finger found the trigger and began applying steady pressure. Then something went wrong. A rock shifted under her elbow, making a small scraping sound that seemed to echo across the mountainside. The sniper's head snapped around toward her position, his own rifle beginning to swing in her direction. Time slowed down the way it does in combat. Maria could see the surprise and alarm in the enemy fighter's eyes as he realized his position had been compromised. His rifle was moving toward her, but slowly, as if through thick liquid. She had perhaps 2 seconds before he could bring his weapon to bear. Maria's training took over completely. Her breathing steadied, her vision tunneled to focus entirely on the target, and her finger completed its motion on the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder as the bullet left the barrel, crossing 30 meters of mountain air in a fraction of a second. The shot was perfect. The sniper pitched backward and was still. Maria remained in position for a long moment, watching through the scope to confirm the threat was eliminated. When she was certain, she keyed her radio. "Mitchell, this is Santos. Target down. I repeat, target down." The change in the battle was immediate. Without the sniper's accurate fire keeping them pinned down, the American soldiers could maneuver freely. The other enemy fighters, realizing their key advantage was gone, began withdrawing from their positions. "Outstanding work, Santos." Mitchell's voice came through her headset. "Now get back down here before their friends show up." But as Maria began her descent, she heard something that made her blood run cold. The sound of helicopter rotors, but coming from the wrong direction. Instead of American air support, enemy reinforcements were arriving by air. The battle was far from over, and now they faced an entirely new threat. Maria looked down at Captain Mitchell's position and realized he was trying to stand despite his wounded shoulder. Even injured, he was preparing to continue leading his soldiers against whatever came next. That's when Maria made the decision that would define the rest of the mission. She wasn't going back to her medical kit. She was going to stay and fight alongside her commander until every last soldier made it home safely. The enemy helicopter appeared over the ridge like a deadly bird of prey, its rotors beating a menacing rhythm against the mountain walls. Maria could see armed men preparing to rappel from the aircraft, and she realized their situation had just become desperate. Captain Mitchell was wounded. They were separated from the main convoy, and enemy reinforcements were about to land between them and their fellow soldiers. "Santos, we need to move now," Mitchell called out, struggling to his feet despite his shoulder wound. Blood was seeping through the field dressing, but he was still trying to command the situation. Maria slid down the rocky slope toward Mitchell's position, keeping low as the helicopter circled overhead. The pilot was looking for a suitable landing spot, giving them precious seconds to plan their next move. She could hear Sergeant Davis on the radio, coordinating defensive positions as the convoy prepared for the new threat. "Sir, you're in no condition to move fast," Maria said, reaching Mitchell's position. "That shoulder needs proper treatment, and you've lost more blood than you realize." "I'm fine," Mitchell insisted, but Maria could see he was pale and unsteady. The combination of blood loss and adrenaline was taking its toll. As his medic, she had a responsibility to keep him alive, even if it meant disobeying orders. The helicopter settled onto a flat area about 100 meters away, and Maria counted 6 fighters jumping out before it lifted off again. These weren't the same irregular fighters they had been battling. These men moved with military precision, carrying modern weapons and wearing tactical gear. "They're trying to cut us off from the convoy," Mitchell observed, watching the enemy soldiers spread out in a disciplined formation. "If they establish positions on that ridge, Davis and the others will be trapped." Maria assessed their tactical situation. She and Mitchell were positioned above the enemy soldiers, which gave them an advantage, but they were also isolated from their unit with limited ammunition. The wounded captain needed medical attention, but there was no safe way to reach the convoy vehicles. "Captain, I need you to stay here and provide overwatch," Maria said, making a command decision. "You can cover me while I work my way around to hit them from the flank." "Absolutely not," Mitchell replied. "You're a medic, not an assault trooper." "Right now, I'm whatever the mission needs me to be," Maria said firmly. She checked her rifle, Mitchell's M4 with the advanced optic. She had 8 magazines of ammunition, enough for a sustained firefight if she was careful with her shots. The enemy soldiers were moving methodically up the slope, using proper tactical movement with covering fire and communication. Maria realized these were probably special forces or elite infantry, not the local fighters they had been engaging earlier. The stakes had just gotten much higher. "Look," Maria said, pointing to the enemy formation. "They're moving in 2 teams. If I can hit the lead team from their blind side, it might break up their advance and give Davis time to reposition the convoy." Mitchell studied the terrain and the enemy movement. His tactical mind was still working despite his injury, and he could see what Maria was planning. It was risky, but it might work if she could get close enough without being detected. "If you're going to do this, you need to be smart about it," he said reluctantly. "Stay low, use the dead ground behind that ridge line. Hit them hard and fast, then get out before they can coordinate a response." Maria nodded, already planning her route. She would have to cover about 200 meters of rough terrain, while staying hidden from 6 well-trained enemy soldiers. Her medical training had taught her to stay calm under pressure, and she would need every bit of that skill now. "Sir, I need you to contact Davis and tell him what's happening," she said. "When I open fire, he needs to be ready to move the convoy out of the kill zone." Mitchell grabbed her arm as she prepared to leave. "Santos, this is above and beyond what anyone should ask of a medic. You don't have to do this." Maria looked at her wounded commander, then down at the convoy where her patients were waiting for evacuation. Private Johnson was still in critical condition, and the other wounded soldiers needed to get to a hospital soon. The enemy soldiers advancing up the slope would prevent that from happening. "Yes, I do," she said simply. "It's my job to keep people alive, and right now that means stopping those fighters from reaching our people." She began moving before Mitchell could respond. Staying low and using every bit of cover available, the rocky terrain was treacherous, but it also provided concealment from the enemy soldiers below. Maria's heart pounded as she worked her way around the enemy's flank, closer to danger than she had ever been in her military career. The lead enemy team was advancing steadily, their weapons trained on the convoy position below. They moved with the confidence of experienced fighters who had done this many times before. Maria realized she would only get one chance at this. If she missed or failed to break up their advance, they would overwhelm the convoy's defensive positions. She reached a rocky outcrop that provided excellent cover and a clear field of fire. The enemy soldiers were now less than 50 meters away, close enough that she could see their faces and equipment clearly. They were focused entirely on their objective below, unaware that death was stalking them from above. Maria settled into a stable shooting position and began to control her breathing. She had never shot at human beings before. All her training had been on paper targets and scenarios. But looking through the scope at the enemy soldiers advancing toward her wounded patients, she felt no hesitation. This was war, and these men were trying to kill her fellow soldiers. The crosshairs settled on the lead fighter, and Maria began applying pressure to the trigger. In a few seconds, she would cross a line that no medic ever wanted to cross, from healer to killer. But sometimes saving lives meant taking them, and Maria Santos was about to learn that lesson in the most direct way possible. As her finger completed its motion on the trigger, Maria thought about the wounded soldiers waiting for her back at the convoy. Whatever happened in the next few minutes, she was fighting for them, and that gave her all the strength she needed to do what had to be done. Maria's first shot dropped the lead enemy soldier instantly. Before the others could react, she had shifted targets and fired again, hitting the team leader who was trying to coordinate a response to the unexpected attack. The precise shots created immediate chaos in the enemy formation as the remaining fighters dove for cover. "Contact left! Contact left!" one of the enemy soldiers shouted in accented English, confirming Maria's assessment that these were well-trained foreign fighters. The remaining 4 enemy soldiers immediately began suppressing Maria's position with automatic weapons fire. Bullets cracked overhead and shattered rocks around her position, forcing her to stay low behind her cover. But her surprise attack had achieved its purpose. The enemy advance had stopped, and they were now focused on her instead of the convoy below. Maria keyed her radio while staying pressed against the rocks. "Mitchell, this is Santos. I've engaged the enemy. Tell Davis to move now." "Roger that," Mitchell's voice came back, strained but determined. "Air support is 2 minutes out. Can you hold your position?" Bullets continued to pound Maria's rocky shelter as she assessed her situation. The enemy soldiers had her position marked and were trying to maneuver for a better angle of attack. She could see one team moving to flank her position, while the others kept her pinned down with covering fire. Down at the convoy, Sergeant Davis had received Mitchell's message and was coordinating the evacuation of wounded soldiers. Maria could hear engines starting and see movement around the vehicles through gaps in the rocks. Her diversion was working, but she was now trapped in an increasingly desperate position. A grenade exploded 10 meters from Maria's cover, showering her with rock fragments and dirt. The enemy soldiers were closing in, using professional small unit tactics to eliminate what they thought was a single American soldier. They had no idea they were hunting a medic who had never expected to be in this kind of fight. Maria shifted positions, moving to a different part of her rocky shelter as bullets continued to seek her out. She caught sight of one enemy fighter advancing through the rocks and took a careful shot, hitting him center mass. The man fell backward, but his partner immediately began laying down suppressive fire that forced Maria back into cover. "Santos, I'm moving to support you." Mitchell's voice came through her headset. "Negative," Maria replied immediately. "You're wounded and needed to coordinate the evacuation." "I can handle this," but even as she said it, Maria wasn't sure it was true. The enemy soldiers were skilled and determined, and they had her outnumbered 3-1. Her ammunition was limited, and they seemed to have plenty. Time was running out, and she could hear them communicating as they coordinated their final assault on her position. Another grenade detonated closer this time, and Maria felt the concussion wave wash over her. Her ears were ringing, and she could taste dust and cordite in the air. The enemy was getting bolder, moving closer to finish her off. That's when she heard the most beautiful sound in the world, the distinctive whop, whop, whop of American helicopters approaching fast. 2 Apache attack helicopters crested the ridge, their weapon systems already locked onto the enemy positions. The cavalry had arrived. The lead Apache pilot's voice came over the radio. "Ground units, this is Warrior 6. We have eyes on enemy combatants. Danger close fire mission approved. Keep your heads down." The attack helicopters opened fire with devastating effect. 30mm cannon rounds shredded the rocks where the enemy soldiers had been taking cover, followed by Hellfire missiles that eliminated any remaining threats. In 30 seconds, the entire enemy force was neutralized. "All enemy combatants down," the Apache pilot reported. "Area is secure." Maria remained in cover for a few more seconds, making sure the threat was really over. When she was certain, she began working her way back down the slope toward Captain Mitchell's position. Her legs felt shaky from adrenaline, and she realized her hands were trembling as the immediate danger passed. She found Mitchell trying to stand, despite his wounded shoulder, determination written across his pale face. "Outstanding work, Santos," he said as she approached. "You saved the entire convoy." "Just doing my job, sir," Maria replied, immediately switching back to medic mode as she examined his wound. The field dressing was soaked with blood, and he needed proper medical attention immediately. "Your job is saving lives, not taking them," Mitchell pointed out. "Sometimes it's the same thing," Maria said, helping him down the slope toward the convoy. "Besides, I still have patients to take care of." The evacuation proceeded smoothly, with air support providing security. Private Johnson and the other wounded soldiers were loaded onto medical helicopters and transported to a field hospital where they would receive proper treatment. Maria rode with Johnson, monitoring his vital signs during the flight. 3 weeks later, Maria received the Silver Star for gallantry in action. The ceremony was held at the forward operating base, with Captain Mitchell presenting the award despite still wearing his arm in a sling from his shoulder wound. Staff Sergeant Santos exemplified the highest traditions of military service. Mitchell read from the citation. "Under intense enemy fire, she treated wounded soldiers, eliminated enemy threats, and ensured the safe evacuation of her entire unit. Her actions saved multiple lives and prevented the loss of critical equipment." After the ceremony, Mitchell approached Maria privately. His shoulder was healing well, and he was scheduled to return to full duty within a month. "You know, Santos, I've been thinking about what happened up there," he said. "You went way beyond what anyone could expect from a medic." Maria shrugged. "I went as far as I needed to go to bring everyone home alive. That's what medics do." "That's what soldiers do," Mitchell corrected. "Great soldiers." 6 months later, Maria Santos received her commission as a second lieutenant and was selected for advanced medical officer training. She would go on to serve 3 more tours in Afghanistan, saving countless lives and earning a reputation as one of the finest combat medics in the Army. But she would always remember that day in the mountains when she learned that sometimes the best way to heal is to fight, and sometimes the greatest act of mercy is refusing to let evil succeed. In the end, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had done exactly what she joined the military to do. She had saved lives, protected her fellow soldiers, and completed the mission, no matter what it cost her personally. The village they had helped that morning eventually became a model for successful humanitarian operations in the region. The medical supplies Maria had distributed helped establish a permanent clinic, and the security provided by the successful defense of the convoy encouraged other aid organizations to work in the area. Years later, Maria would receive letters from some of the villagers she had treated that day, thanking her not just for the medicine, but for the example of courage and selflessness she had demonstrated. They understood that the young American medic had risked everything to help people she had never met, and that her sacrifice had made their lives better in ways that extended far beyond that single day. It was exactly the kind of impact Maria Santos had hoped to make when she first decided to become a soldier and a healer. She had learned that sometimes those two roles required the same courage, the same dedication, and the same willingness to put others before yourself, no matter what the cost might be.